Good morning.
For being with us. Were you surprised that Boris Johnson managed to come back with a deal?
Slightly, yes. I mean, the thing to understand is that since he was elected, Boris has had people trying to undermine his negotiating position at every turn. Sort of taking away this option, taking away that option, or looking for extension. And despite that, he was able to come back with it, make them reopen the negotiation, which everybody said was impossible, and then change their position.
And he's now, though, had to write that letter requesting an extension, a delay. I mean, do you think he had to write it?
Yeah, I think he had no choice. That was the law. But the irony, of course, is that Parliament can instruct you to do something. They can't instruct you to change your mind. And that's what he's made patently clear. He hasn't changed his mind. He doesn't want an extension. He has to send the letter, but that's it.
But do you think that there is a chance now that we might not leave the EU at the end of October?
There's a chance, but I don't think there's a probability.
Why not? What do you think will cause?
Well, because he's got this deal, and you have to understand that the risk of no deal from the European point of view is, if anything, much worse than the risk for us. I mean, there's a downside for us. The turbulence will come out if we have no deal. But the risk for Ireland is terrible. The risk for the Netherlands and Belgium, cross-channel traffic, is terrible. The risk for Germany is 100,000 jobs. So they want a deal to happen. So they want this deal to get through. They've struck the deal. They want it to happen. So I think they'll do everything possible to make it happen.
But what can they do? It comes down to Parliament now. And if you say that no deal will be so bad for them, then maybe they're just going to grant another extension and we won't end up leaving.
I think the first thing they're going to do is not going to answer until the end of the month. That leaves Parliament with having to make a sort of gamble, if you like. If it rejects this deal, if it alters what's called the WABE, the Withdrawal and Implementation Bill, the piece of law that makes it happen, if they don't accept that or mess it around, then they themselves, Parliament, are ending up taking the risk of precipitating no deal. Ironically, yesterday's vote actually makes no deal slightly more likely, not less likely.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you do admit that there is a chance that we may not be out by the end of the month. I just wonder, was it a mistake for Boris Johnson to be so firm in his promises that would happen? I mean, just to take one example of the kind of thing the Prime Minister has been saying recently, we are getting ready to come out on the 31st of October, come what may, do or die. That might not happen now. He's written the extension.
No, I see what you're saying, but go back to the first question you asked me, this deal. Why did this deal happen? Why did they reopen the negotiation? If you look back over 3 months, you can see every time Boris was firm and determined about it, they came to the table to talk. Every time Parliament undermined him, they backed off and started putting new conditions on. He's got to be determined. He's got to be clear about it. He's got to be willing to go to no deal. Nobody wants no deal. I don't want no deal. He doesn't want no deal. But you've got to be willing to go that route in order to get a good deal. And that's what he's done.
So do you think the deal will get through Parliament next week?
I think it will. There may be attempts to tack delays onto it. There may be attempts to tie his hands in the next stage. Remember, this is only halfway. Get in the next stage, so you can't threaten no deal. Well, that's when we get to saying, OK, we better have a general election. But it'll get through next week, I think.
Amber Rudd, who we spoke to a little earlier, just before yourself on the programme, was saying that she would vote for the deal. She, of course, was stripped of the Conservative whip. If she does vote for the deal, do you think she should be allowed a route back into the party?
Well, I want the people who've left, and there's the 21, and Amber, as she said, chose to leave. I want them to have a route back, but it's got to be on terms that we will deliver the decision of the British people. But let me just pick up on what Amber said. I mean, it was a little bit disingenuous. She's a great mate of mine, so I can probably get away with this. What happened in the course of the last 9 months? Every so often, Parliament laid down terms and conditions upon which the government should behave. And the last terms and conditions they laid down was you've got to have a meaningful vote which allows Parliament to say yes or no to the deal. And if you don't, you extend. That's what they said. We get to yesterday, and the truth was that no matter whether Parliament voted the deal or not, we're going to extend. That was the effect of the Letwin legislation or Letwin amendment. And you can't keep doing that. You can't keep doing that. You've got to actually get behind the Prime Minister and make the deal work. And you can't keep putting conditions on, because all you're doing is helping the European negotiators. And I'm sure they don't really want to do that.
I mean, talking about getting behind the Prime Minister and making the deal work, if there are Conservative Eurosceptics who vote against the deal, should they lose the whip in the same way that the other rebels did?
When I was a whip, in the most unbelievably tough circumstances of the Maastricht arrangements, nobody lost the whip. Nobody was deselected. I stopped them being deselected. I'm not a great believer in withdrawing whips.
There are other dark arts that you could potentially employ in the whips office.
Persuasion, for a start. Just actually saying to people, this is the best deal you can possibly have. I mean, just think about it. 2 weeks ago, people were saying this was impossible. That was the words being used by European Union, by people in the opposition, by John McDonnell, by people like Amber. I don't know whether Amber herself said it, but people like Amber. They all said it's impossible. Now we've got something. Let's make it work.
You say that it is, in your view, a deal that people should get behind. But there are some really genuine concerns about what's in this deal, particularly from politicians in Northern Ireland. Earlier this week, you said that you would look personally at what Arlene Foster, the leader of the DUP, had to say about the deal, and that it was very important. Well, we now know what the DUP have said, and this is what they've said when it comes to the deal. They have said, these proposals are not, in our view, beneficial to the economic well-being of Northern Ireland, and they undermine the integrity of the Union. I mean, how much cause for concern does that last part give you?
You can bet that I look very carefully at this, and I look at all the unionist people, unionist politicians on this matter, and I have some sympathy with one element of it. I'll come back to it in a second, but I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong for a couple of reasons. A threat to the union? No, the details show you actually it's not. And the best test of that is look at what David Trimble said. David Trimble had put his life, literally his life, on the line for the Good Friday Agreement. He was one of the authors of it, and he says this is not a threat to the union. In terms of economics, what does it do? Firstly, it says you can take any product from Northern Ireland, sell it into the UK, no checks at all. Going the other way, if it's Britain, the rest of Britain, to Northern Ireland, then and to sell in Northern Ireland, no checks at all either. It's only when we're selling things in Northern Ireland which may go south, or maybe a part of something going south. And so from that point of view, it's the lightest possible touch. And in exchange for that, they are going to be able to benefit from every new trade deal we do. That's the advantage. So, I looked at it very carefully. I've invested a lot of my life in Northern Irish issues, one way and another. So I care deeply about this, but I think they're wrong. And I thought about it very hard. I deliberately didn't commit myself at the beginning of the week because I wanted to see the detail. And I think they're not right. I mean, the bit where I think they've got a point is that we've changed the mechanism of decision. What Boris has managed to do is get the European Union to accept that Northern Ireland itself will make decisions every few years, every 4 years. They'll make a decision whether this is working for them or not. But the decision is on the basis of a majority, not every community agreeing. That's the one thing.
I just wonder if you're underestimating some of the differences, though, because we know that Northern Ireland will have to follow certain EU rules that the rest of the United Kingdom will not, on VAT, on food standards. There will be checks in the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, and I appreciate that people can choose, certain politicians in Northern Ireland, very important politicians like Mr. Trimble, but there are others who have deeply held concerns about what this means for the future of the Union.
Yeah, I've no doubt that there are those legitimate concerns in that, but just look back at the while. I had the misfortune once of being Europe Minister during the mad cow disease crisis. I mean, a long time ago. But in the middle of that, one Northern Irish politician said, "We want British cattle checked before it comes into Northern Ireland." You know who that was? That was Ian Paisley Sr., the greatest unionist of all time in many ways. And, that's because, in practical terms, he saw this was good for his constituents, good for Northern Ireland to protect them from a problem. And that's what this is. And they'll have, as I say, every 4 years, they'll have a chance to say, yes or no, this is working for us or not working for us. And it may sound not very often, but actually these things don't change very fast. The regulations on chemicals or the regulations on car manufacture don't change every few months. They change every 5 or 10 years, and that they'll have a chance to actually exercise their judgment on that, which actually is one of the brilliant things that Boris pulled off, because that wasn't even on the table in previous negotiations.
And while we've got you, we introduced you saying you were the original Brexit secretary. Yeah. What mistakes do you think the UK has made in these negotiations?
Well, you need to look at my resignation letter, really. But we started off accepting the sequencing. Now, a very techie thing, but basically we talked about the European Union's issues before we got around to talking about ours. We should have been able to trade one off against the other. We gave away too much in terms of full alignment, the so-called full alignment. It's all quite techie stuff, I'm afraid. We conceded too much at every turn. We were not tough enough, bluntly. We're simply not tough enough. And I think, and this issue of no deal is quite important in it. The European Union did not believe Theresa May meant it when she said no deal is better than a bad deal. So that's what, all of that telegraphed that we were going to be easy to roll over, and that's what they tried to do. Boris stopped that.
Don't worry about techie details. We love a bit of detail on the show. It's fine. And how about you personally? Are there any mistakes that you made?
Undoubtedly vast numbers.
Come on then, give us one.
No. But it's actually for historians rather than me to judge that. I should have threatened to resign. I don't believe in threatening to resign, but maybe I should have done at the point when we actually made that concession on Northern Ireland. But that was it was interesting on the day. It was quite funny. With hindsight, we came back to the House of Commons. I thought, this concession we've made will get terrible handling in the House of Commons. Everybody thought it was wonderful. The opposition thought it was wonderful. The ERG thought it was wonderful. Jacob Rees-Mogg thought it was wonderful. And I sit there thinking, maybe I made a mistake in thinking it was wrong. Maybe Theresa was right and I was wrong. Actually, it turned out, of course, I did turn out to be right in the long run. But
not sure if that really counts as a mistake then.
No. I wasn't putting it up as a mistake. I was just as an observation. That's all.